So, good evening to the podcast Learning to Teach for Success. Tonight's topic is how can we use fear or that feeling of not having the energy and the drive to succeed? How can we use that feeling of fear of achievement as a driving force to be able to do even more? So, that's the plan for tonight. We're going to approach it in three different parts. One is how we can approach that as a learner, second as a teacher, and third as a leader. So these are three topics that I enjoy. My one word is learning, and I do believe that the more we learn, the more we can do amazing things. So welcome tonight, and let's hope that we're going to learn something fun here. So when we are in a learning environment, either as a person like me learning to become a better teacher, a better human, or if you're a learner in a classroom, what you will notice is that often there's that little fear where if you are doing something, if you're working on a project, or if there's anything you need to produce, to create for an end result, to create an outcome for marks, an outcome for anything, often there's that little fear here in our heart where we're not sure if we're going to actually succeed. And too often, that little fear is enough to not move forward. Now, many times I've talked in the past that one of my favorite expressions is how we can fail forward. And it is scary to fail forward because we need to keep in mind that there's a possibility of not being able to succeed, but keeping in mind that just taking action to achieve your goal is enough to be successful. So that's what we are working with tonight. So if in a classroom, for example, I'm asking for a project or presentation, too often people say, oh, they see the big project and it's for some so complicated that they're not quite sure how they're going to start and how it will finish. And often that's enough for people not to start. There are other people, they start the project, but by the time they get to the end, there's that little voice or the little feelings that tells them, well, if I finish, I'm not sure what will be the outcome. Would it be good or not? So often people don't finish project, especially some students, where if they finish a project and give it in, that means that they will have a mark and there's an outcome there. But if they don't hand in the project, then the chances are that they will not be marked, and therefore they will not be able to have anyone tell them if they've succeeded or failed. And that's real. So my suggestion for that is to play with what I called micro changes. So it's very hard for people to say, okay, it's hard for me to do something. I fear failure. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to get to my goal. However, if you are to take the end goal and you are to write all the steps you think you will need to achieve that goal, then what you do is that you do one step at a time, and doing one step at a time that you've outlined helps you to move forward. Now, the best way to achieve more and bypass that idea that the fear of failure is to take action. Because as soon as you take action, then you're focusing on the next step instead of focusing on how you feel about taking that said step. So I think that is something to keep in mind. For example, in one of my classes, my students have done probably since the beginning of the semester, probably one presentation a week. Sometimes it was very short, sometimes it was a bit longer. And the idea here is that the more they make presentations, the better they get. And a couple of days ago, I told them, okay, we have 20 minutes to summarize an article. They each had a portion of it. They all created a couple slides on the article. And within 20-25 minutes, they all had a presentation ready. So what happened is the day after, they were just presenting them. Now, if I had done that in September, many of them would have freaked out. However, having done many presentations, they knew they had a database or a few presentation themes for them to work with. They already knew that the article was long, but if each of them had a few little paragraphs to summarize, that was feasible. And then thinking of presentation, they had done so many of them that it was easy. So having a chance to practice makes the idea that um, the fear of failing or not succeeding brings it down, and therefore it's easier. By the way, that's why we do fire drills if we live if in high schools and elementary schools and in other places. Fire drills or even drills for sports, the more you practice, the better you are. Same thing with learning a new language. Now, that brings me to my second part of this podcast, where if you are learning every day, this is amazing. But one of the purpose to learn is to become a better person, and then you can teach other what you know. Now, this is at any ages because you've got grade 2 students helping kindergarten students with what they have to do. You have high school students babysitting others or tutoring elementary school teachers, elementary school students. Come on, it's getting late and my thoughts are mixing up. That's okay. And then you have teachers who are learning so they can teach others. And it works in the industry if you have trainers that are doing trainings for companies and so on. Even parents, if you think about that. But the whole thing is that once you are in a situation where you have to teach something, then you need to have a better understanding. Because if you're trying to teach something and you're not quite sure, then people often notice. They notice that you don't feel too comfortable. And the reason for that is that even teachers sometimes they have in their mind a little voice, or sometimes hear in their heart a little voice saying, oh, there's a fear of failing. Because the fear of failing is there at all the steps of our journey. And the best way to feel more comfortable in teaching is to actually teach. And if you want to change things in the way you do your classes or your training, the best way is, as I mentioned earlier, to do micro changes. Because changing too many things all at once is very hard, because sometimes it's unsettling and you cannot foresee what will be the end result. And not being able to see the end result is very hard. So that's why new teachers, sometimes it's hard for them to get into the groove, and that's why they have a practicum session where they have to go into school and actually do the work. That's the only way you can do that, is to actually do what you are meant to do. And teaching is amazing for that. And then again, micro changes are very important. Does that mean that you cannot do big changes? In a school and for teachers, often we do what we call pilot projects. When you have a pilot project, then what you do is you have a look at what you want to do. You look at new strategies, new ideas, and then you say, okay, let's go full force and see what happens. Now, when you do a pilot project, often you have an idea of where you want to go. But on the other hand, you have the energy to say, okay, I'm doing something new. If I succeed, that is great. And if I fail, that's great too. And that's very important, because the pilot project gives you the freedom to say, okay, I'm going to try something, take action. If I succeed, I'll continue. If I fail, I'll fail forward and continue. And at the end, everybody is the better. Now, it happens that pilot projects don't work at all. But at the end, we always learn something new that we can apply to other strategies that we can follow in class. And I do like that all the time. And that brings me to the third topic today, because today will be a shorter version for the podcast. I'm planning about maybe 10, 12 minutes. And my third aspect is about leading and leadership. As a leader, it's sometimes in our mind here and in our heart, we feel that we're fearful of what can happen. Because as a leader, you need to be there for others, but you need to be there for yourself as well. So here we have Prairie Dog. Cindy, very nice to see you today. And that's true that pilot project is an idea. And we do that in school, but we can do it as a leader, but we can do it in life too. For example, you have a new idea. This podcast is a pilot project for me. So in the same way, if I succeed, it's wonderful. If I don't, I'm learning new things so that my next podcast is great. And by the way, if you have a chance to go and see Cindy on her channel, Prairie Dodgers, you'll notice that she's doing a podcast and a show almost daily. And she's amazing. So go and have a look at what she does. It's great. So as a leader, as I mentioned, we need to figure out, okay, if we're fearing what we need to do, sometimes we have to look within the system where we are. Leaders may feel they are like in a kayak where they'll be able to go around and deal with the situation as they come, which is amazing. The difficulties, though, is that some other leaders feel that their company or where they are, it's more like a huge boat, like the Titanic, where if you want to make a decision or make a move or change something, you have to think so far ahead because the whole Titanic takes a long time to turn. So there are two different perspectives here. But in both ways, you have to keep in mind that you can do micro management so that you can, or micro leading steps so that you can help others. Keeping in mind that as leaders, you're not there to tell people what to do. You're there to help others be the best version of themselves. So that means that you want to be there for them to make the micro changes or make bigger changes so that they feel confident enough so that they can continue what they want to do, but also know that they have support if something is not quite working well. And at the end, the leader and the team member, they all work together to learn and make things wonderful. And this is the idea for tonight, where sometimes we have our little voice here or here, where there's that fear of starting, that fear of success, that fear of not knowing what will happen. But as a learner, the more you try, the more you attempt to practice the drills to become a better learner and do the steps where even if you fail a little bit, you can always learn from what you do. To the idea of teaching, that the more you teach, the more you have to feel comfortable with what we know. But on top of that, the more you teach, the better you get at knowing. So that's quite important. And as leader, don't forget, the more you help others become the best people they can be, others will feel supported. And that's the best way to make that little voice here or that voice here that makes you feel that there's some fear and you're not sure if you're going to get there. The leader is there to support you to make your life amazing so that you can create a better world. On this, thank you very much for joining me today. Cindy from Prairie Dodgers, very nice for coming and see me, and I will wish you a very good evening to all of you. On this, take care, and I'll see you next week at 7:30 for the next podcast. Take care. Bye-bye.